Proto-metal, late 1960s to early 1970s. Proto-metal emerged in the late 1960s from blues, psychedelic, and acid rock, but distinguished itself with louder, darker, and heavier sounds built on distorted guitars and emphatic drumming. Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple, each founded in 1968, are seen as the key pioneers. Black Sabbath, especially Tony Iommi's low, distorted riffs and bleak lyrics, set many of the traits that shaped doom metal and influenced nearly every later subgenre. Led Zeppelin's place remains debated. Some cite their heaviness and stage presence, while purists classify them as hard rock. This dispute established a lasting precedent in metal culture, defining true metal and sparking endless authenticity debates as the genre splintered into substyles. Speed metal, late 1970s. Speed metal acted as the bridge between classic heavy metal and the extreme thrash that followed. It pushed the genre toward faster tempos and sharper precision, built on rapid alternate picking, tight palm-muted riffs, and aggressive drumming that stopped short of full-blast beat intensity. Unlike thrash, it kept a strong melodic sensibility, often showcasing long virtuosic solos. Motorhead injected punk's raw energy into heavy metal, but bands like Exciter codified the style with Heavy Metal Maniac, 1983. Accept's Fast as a Shark, 1982, became an archetype, pairing breakneck riffing with soaring vocals, while Judas Priest advanced the form of tracks like Exciter, blending speed with operatic delivery. Though eventually overshadowed by thrash, speed metal's DNA remained crucial, feeding into thrash's aggression and power metal's melodic drive. New wave of British heavy metal, late 1970s. The new wave of British heavy metal, or NWO/BHM, marked heavy metal's first major refinement. Bands like Judas Priest and Motorhead stripped away lingering blues influences, emphasizing speed, precision, and aggression, while Iron Maiden and Saxon codified a leaner, harder sound built on palm-muted riffs, galloping rhythms, and high-energy drumming. Punk's raw velocity fed into the style, but without sacrificing harmonic complexity. Equally important was the movement's infrastructure. Independent labels, fanzines, and a strong DIY ethic allowed bands to bypass mainstream media and reach fans directly. This combination of sound and grassroots method became the blueprint for American thrash, while the NWO/BHM's denim and leather look cemented its role as a symbol of rebellion and authenticity in metal culture. Glam metal, early 1980s. Glam metal, also known as hair metal, pursued the opposite path by maximizing accessibility and spectacle. Drawing on glam rock and hard rock, it emphasized catchy choruses, melodic riffs, and a polished production style designed for radio. Visual aesthetics, makeup, spandex, and teased hair were as central as the music itself. Bands like Motley Crue, Poison, and Bon Jovi defined the sound, while Guns N' Roses added a grittier edge. Lyrically, glam metal revolved around love, nightlife, and excess. Concerts were theatrical events, amplifying its mainstream appeal. However, glam's success also provoked backlash. Purists accused it of smoothing out heavy metal's raw edge. Underground musicians responded by doubling down on heaviness and authenticity, a tension that gave rise to death metal and other extreme genres. Glam's dominance on radio and MTV made it a cultural force, but also the lightning rod against which underground scenes defined themselves. Thrash metal, early 1980s. Thrash metal turned NWO/BHM's brisk momentum into sustained velocity by fusing it with hardcore punk's ferocity. The core guitar language centers on low register, percussive riffs, executed with heavy downpicking and tight palm muting to create a continuous chug, while leads favor rapid scalar runs, chromaticism, and frequent tritone intervals to heighten tension. Drums use double bass patterns to maintain relentless drive. Blast-adjacent bursts appear in fills, but the defining feel is hyper-locked precision. Vocals range from shouted to barked, keeping intelligibility high enough for topical lyrics about politics, war, and social decay. Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax, the Big Four, simultaneously defined and popularized the style. Metallica's early records, Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, set the genre's compositional bar, while Slayer's Rain in Blood demonstrated how extremity of tempo and spiteful harmony could point directly toward death metal. Thrash also positioned itself culturally as the anti-glam. No theatrical polish, no radio-first choruses, just speed, precision, and hostility. It distinguished itself from its predecessors by being technically precise, yet raw in delivery, serving as both a bridge and a counter movement to other rising styles. Death metal, mid-1980s. Death metal pushed thrash into harsher extremes with low-tuned, heavy distorted guitars, guttural death growls, and relentless blast beats that created a machine gun intensity. Songs often abandoned verse-chorus structure for abrupt tempo shifts and complex riffs designed to overwhelm. The genre's origins are debated. Possessed's 1984 demo Death Metal gave the style its name, but Death's Scream Bloody Gore, 1987, is widely considered the first fully realized example, earning Chuck Schuldiner the title of Godfather of Death Metal. Tampa, Florida became the scene's hub, with Death, Obituary, Morbid Angel, and Deicide anchored by Morrisound recording. Even Florida's sweltering climate, keeping musicians indoors, was credited with fueling the scene's intensity. Death metal also served as an ideological backlash to glam. Bands rejected fashion and spectacle, adopting plain clothes to signal authenticity and total commitment to sonic extremity. Doom metal, early 1980s. Doom metal slowed metal's momentum to a crawl, embracing heaviness and despair instead of speed. Inspired directly by Black Sabbath's earliest work, doom relies on slow, plodding tempos, low-tuned guitars, and dense bass-heavy tones that create an atmosphere of foreboding. Dissonant intervals, especially the tritone, are frequently used to evoke unease. Songs often rely on repetition and extended riffs, producing a hypnotic, weighty effect. Vocals vary widely, from mournful, clean singing to harsh growls, depending on the band's style. Lyrical themes focus on grief, suffering, fear, and death. The Big Four of Doom, Pentagram, Saint Vitus, Trouble, and Candlemass, established the genre in the 1980s, each reinforcing Sabbath's legacy while adding their own distinct flavor. Unlike thrash and death metal, doom does not channel aggression. Its defining feature is the deliberate evocation of melancholy and dread, creating a unique emotional resonance within the metal spectrum. Grindcore, mid-1980s. Grindcore is one of metal's most extreme offshoots, fusing hardcore punk's aggression with thrash's speed. It is defined by hyperfast tempos, distorted riffs, and vocals ranging from guttural growls to shrill screams, often delivered so rapidly they're indecipherable. Blast beats at extreme speed give the music its relentless chaos. A hallmark of the style is brevity. Songs often last under a minute, with Napalm's Death's You Suffer, 1.316 seconds, standing as both the shortest recorded song and a statement of grindcore's maximum impact in minimal time ethos. Lyrical approaches vary from Napalm Death and Terrorizer's political critiques to gore-obsessed or satirical offshoots like Gore Grind and Death Grind. While it remained underground, grindcore heavily influenced death metal, hybrid genres, and experimental metal, embodying the pursuit of extremity taken to its farthest edge. Black metal, mid-1980s. Second wave, early 1990s. Black metal is as much about atmosphere and ideology as musical form. Its sound is built on tremolo-picked guitar riffs, raw, low-fidelity necro sound, shrieking vocals, and dissonant scales, with blast beats driving a relentless wall of intensity. The genre unfolded in two waves. The first wave, led by Venom, Bathory, and Celtic Frost, introduced harsh vocals, satanic imagery, and abrasive riffing. The second wave, rising from Norway in the early 1990s with Mayhem, Burzum, and Dark Throne, cemented the style and gave it infamy through church burnings and even murders, acts sensationalized by the media. This rhetoric of evil created a feedback loop. Sensational coverage magnified the scene's transgression, which some bands embraced as branding, while others struggled against misrepresentation. Musically, black metal prioritizes atmosphere, cold, bleak, and raw, while ideologically it often rejects mainstream religion, consumerism, and modernity, making it one of the most notorious yet artistically distinct subgenres. Power metal, mid-1980s. Power metal stands in direct contrast to black metal's nihilism by embracing energy, virtuosity, and optimism. Musically, it features fast tempos, soaring high-pitched vocals, melodic twin guitar harmonies, and frequent incorporation of symphonic or classical influences. The result is music that feels triumphant and epic, often inviting audience participation through anthemic choruses. Lyrically, power metal distinguishes itself through fantasy, mythology, and heroic storytelling. Bands such as Helloween and Manowar pioneered the genre, with Blind Guardian and Dragon Force expanding it into highly technical, narrative-driven compositions. Sabaton later introduced historical themes with the same grandiose style. Power metal's theatricality and optimistic sound define its identity, positioning it as a clear foil to the dark and morbid themes of other metal genres. The focus on triumph, fantasy, and powerful melodies distinguishes it from the gritty realism of thrash or the nihilism of black metal. Progressive metal, mid-1980s. Progressive metal is a genre that pushes the boundaries of traditional metal by fusing it with the more experimental, cerebral, and complex compositions of progressive rock. It is characterized by complex song structures, frequent meter changes, unorthodox harmonies, and a showcase of the extreme technical proficiency of its performers. The genre's eclecticism is a hallmark, with bands often incorporating influences from jazz, classical, and Middle Eastern music. The genre was pioneered in the mid-1980s by a trio of bands often referred to as the Big Three: Queensryche, Fates Warning, and Dream Theater. Dream Theater, in particular, solidified the genre's sound with their 1992 album Images and Words, which is often considered a definitive example of progressive metal. The core defining feature of progressive metal is its focus on instrumental virtuosity and experimental composition. This stands in contrast to the straightforward structures of traditional metal or the raw, atmospheric simplicity of black metal, making it a genre for listeners who seek intricate, unpredictable, and technically demanding musical journeys. Melodic death metal, early 1990s. Melodic death metal, or melodeath, fuses the aggression of death metal with the melodic guitar work of the new wave of British heavy metal. It retains distorted guitars, blast beats, and harsh vocals, but layers them with harmonized riffs and solos, balancing brutality with melody. The style emerged from Sweden's Gothenburg scene, led by At the Gates, In Flames, and Dark Tranquillity, with Carcass in the UK adding early contributions. At the Gates' Slaughter of the Soul, 1995, defined the genre's sharp, streamlined approach, while In Flames emphasized expansion melodies and Dark Tranquillity leaned into atmosphere. By marrying harshness with accessibility, melodeath bridged underground credibility with wider appeal. Its sound heavily influenced metalcore, which adopted its melodic riffs and choruses, proving that intensity and melody could coexist without compromise. Nu metal, mid-1990s. Nu metal becomes one of the most commercially successful metal subgenres, blending heavy riffs with hip-hop, funk, industrial, and grunge. Down-tuned, often 7-string guitars emphasized rhythm over complexity, while vocals shifted between rapping, clean singing, and harsh screams. DJs and sampling added scratching, loops, and atmospheric effects, setting it apart from traditional forms. Korn's 1994 debut laid the foundation, and Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory, 2000, pushed the style to massive mainstream success with over 12 million US sales. Limp Bizkit and Slipknot also defined the scene, combining aggression with crossover appeal. Lyrically, nu metal centered on alienation, trauma, and personal struggle, resonating strongly with younger fans. Despite its huge sales, many purists dismissed it as inauthentic, seeing its mainstream popularity as a betrayal of metal's underground ethos. Metalcore, 2000s. Metalcore blends extreme metal's aggression with hardcore punk's intensity. Its hallmark structure alternates between screamed verses and melodic sung choruses, anchored by the breakdown, a slow crushing section of syncopated riffs and pounding drums built for moshing. Guitars borrow from thrash and melodic death metal, using tremolo picking, palm-muted chugs, and harmonized leads. The style developed in the late 1990s but exploded in the 2000s. Converge pioneered a chaotic, hardcore-rooted version, while Killswitch Engage and As I Lay Dying popularized a more melodic strain, mixing Gothenburg-inspired riffs with soaring choruses. This balance gave metalcore mainstream exposure while preserving credibility in the heavy music scene. Thematically, it focuses on personal struggle, resilience, and emotional catharsis, standing apart from death metal's gore or black metal's nihilism. Its accessibility drew a wide audience, while its heaviness kept it firmly extreme. Over time, the genre split into melodic variants and more brutal forms, eventually spawning deathcore. Deathcore, 2000s. Deathcore fuses death metal's brutality with metalcore's structure and breakdowns. It keeps guttural vocals, blast beats, and down-tuned guitars, but emphasizes slow, crushing breakdowns alongside bursts of speed and technical riffs. The genre gained traction in the early 2000s with Job for a Cowboy's viral Entombment of a Machine and Suicide Silence's defining presence. Whitechapel expanded the sound with triple guitar layering, adding extra density. Lyrically, deathcore pushes themes of violence, nihilism, and misanthropy, polarizing within metal. Fans celebrate its intensity, while critics dismiss its breakdown-heavy reputation. Still, it secured a strong following among younger listeners and became a defining force in the 2000s extreme music scene. Djent, late 2000s. Djent, a branch of progressive metal, is defined by its signature djent sound, heavily palm-muted, syncopated chugs on extended-range guitars, often 7 or 8 strings. Unlike thrash or death metal, which rely on speed or brutality, djent focuses on intricate rhythms, polymeters, and layered production. Meshuggah pioneered the style with precise machine-like riffing in the 1990s, but it exploded in the late 2000s as an internet phenomenon, driven by bedroom musicians sharing demos online. Bands like Periphery, Tesseract, and Animals as Leaders popularized it, combining rhythmic complexity with melodic leads, ambient textures, and progressive structures. Known for its polished production, tight guitar tones, triggered drums, and digital clarity, djent emphasizes technical mastery and experimentation. It grew from an online niche into a global touring genre by the 2010s, bridging groove-heavy riffing with progressive ambition. Alternate metal, early 1990s. Alternate metal is a broad category that blends heavy metal with alternative rock, grunge, punk, funk, or hip-hop. Its sound centers on mid-paced, down-tuned riffs, heavy yet groove-driven, paired with diverse vocals ranging from clean singing to harsh screams. Rejecting strict formulas, it thrives on experimentation and unconventional song structures. Faith No More helped pioneer the style with funk-infused riffs and eclectic vocals on Epic. Tool added complex rhythms and atmospheric depth, while System of a Down mixed politically charged lyrics with unpredictable, genre-hopping arrangements. Nu metal is often considered a branch of alt metal due to its crossover elements. More ethos than formula, alternative metal served as a creative space in the 1990s and 2000s for bands that didn't fit traditional categories, making it one of the most versatile branches of the genre. Industrial metal, late 1980s. Industrial metal combines the aggression of heavy metal with the mechanical repetition of electronic textures of industrial music. Its sound is built on pounding, looped riffs, heavy use of sampling, synthesizers, and distorted vocals. The result is a cold, machine-like aesthetic that emphasizes rhythm and atmosphere as much as guitar riffs. Ministry helped define the style of Psalm 69 in 1992, while Godflesh pioneered the fusion of sludgy guitar tone with industrial beats. Nine Inch Nails added a more accessible, radio-friendly edge, blending industrial textures with rock songwriting, while Rammstein brought theatrical pyrotechnics and German-language lyrics into a global stage. Fear Factor later pushed the style further by tightly synchronizing guitar riffs with programmed drum machines, reinforcing its mechanized identity. Industrial metal stands out for its integration of technology, often thematically focusing on dehumanization, control, and dystopian imagery. Its aesthetic and sonic approach made it a powerful crossover genre, reaching both metal and industrial audiences. Folk metal, early 1990s. Folk metal fuses traditional heavy metal instrumentation with folk music, often incorporating authentic folk instruments such as fiddles, accordions, hurdy-gurdies, and flutes. The fusion creates a distinctive sound where heavy riffs and blast beats are interwoven with folk melodies, producing a blend of aggression and cultural identity. The subgenre was pioneered by Skyclad in the early 1990s, while later bands like Croatian and Korpiklani expanded it with strong ties to Celtic and Scandinavian folk traditions. Korpiklani's Vodka is a prime example of the genre's celebratory, beer-drenched energy. Folk metal lyrics frequently draw on mythology, nature, and cultural history, making it deeply tied to regional identity. Its tone can range from festive and upbeat to dark and mystical, depending on the specific folk traditions being integrated. Viking metal, early 1990s. Viking metal is defined less by strict musical rules and more by its thematic and cultural focus. Inspired by Norse mythology and Viking history, the genre often draws sonically from black metal, death metal, or folk metal, but what unites it is a lyrical content and imagery rooted in the Viking Age. Bathory's later albums, such as Hammerheart, 1990, are widely credited as the foundation of Viking metal. Enslaved expanded the style with progressive influences, while Amon Amarth popularized a melodic death metal variation infused with Viking themes. Concert imagery often includes horned helmets, longboats, and Old Norse references. The music itself varies, but whether atmospheric, melodic, or brutal, it serves as a vessel for storytelling rooted in history and myth. Post-metal, mid-1990s. Post-metal is an experimental offshoot that strips away traditional song structures and emphasizes atmosphere, texture, and dynamic contrast. Rather than focusing on riffs or choruses, post-metal compositions often unfold in long, layered builds that mix heaviness with ambiance. It is influenced heavily by post-rock, which prioritizes mood and progression over conventional hooks. Neurosis is credited as the pioneer, combining sludge metal's weight with expansive experimental structures. Isis further refined the approach with albums like Oceanic in 2000, creating immersive, meditative soundscapes. Other bands like Peloton and Cult of Luna have continued the style. Post-metal is less about aggression and more about emotional immersion. By offsetting crushing heaviness with quiet, atmospheric passages, it creates a unique tension between intensity and serenity, appealing to listeners seeking depth and introspection. Sludge metal, late 1980s to early 1990s. Sludge metal is a fusion of doom metal's slow, crushing weight with hardcore punk's aggression. The result is music that is both suffocatingly heavy and abrasive, drenched in distortion and often played with deliberately unpolished raw production. Tempos are slow to mid-paced, but the delivery is filled with hostility rather than melancholy. Pioneers include the Melvins, who slowed punk riffs to doom tempos, and I Hate God, who brought nihilistic intensity to the style. Crowbar and Acid Bath also became key players in establishing sludge as a defined genre. Lyrical themes often revolve around poverty, addiction, and despair, giving sludge a gritty, real-world bleakness compared to the fantastical themes of other subgenres. Sludge metal became especially influential in the American South, where its swampy, grimy atmosphere reflected both cultural and environmental context. Black gaze, late 2000s. Black gaze merges the raw aggression of black metal with the dreamy, atmospheric qualities of shoegaze and post-rock. Tremolo-picked guitars and blast beats remain, but they're layered with lush, reverb-heavy melodies, creating music that is simultaneously harsh and ethereal. Vocals often retain the harsh rasp of black metal, but are submerged within the mix as another texture rather than the focal point. Alcest pioneered the genre in France, initially rooted in black metal but moving toward dreamy soundscapes. Death Heaven's Sunbather in 2013 brought black gaze wider recognition, blending raw intensity with uplifting, almost cinematic passages. Black gaze redefines what black metal atmospheres can be, transforming bleakness into something transparent. Its hybrid nature has made it one of the most artistically debated yet influential developments of the 21st century. Gothic metal, early 1990s. Gothic metal blends heavy riffs with the dark atmospheric qualities of gothic rock. Its defining sound includes melancholy melodies, minor keys, and lyrical focus on themes such as loss, despair, and romance. The genre often uses the Beauty and the Beast vocal approach, combining male growls with clean, operatic female vocals to heighten dramatic contrast. Paradise Lost's Gothic in 1991 is considered the cornerstone of the genre, while My Dying Bride and Type O Negative expanded its stylistic palette. Later bands like Within Temptation and Lacuna Coil added more symphonic and accessible elements, broadening its reach. Gothic metal's identity lies in mood, dramatic, sorrowful, and theatrical. It bridges the aggression of metal with the introspection of Gothic aesthetics, appealing to listeners who seek both heaviness and emotional depth. Christian metal, late 1970s onward. Christian metal is a thematic umbrella rather than a distinct sound. Bands across subgenres, from thrash to metalcore, have used metal's intensity to explore themes of faith, redemption, and evangelism. Resurrection Band in the late 1970s and Stryper in the 1980s led the way, with To Hell with the Devil, 1986, becoming a landmark release. Later, POD carried Christian messages into nu metal, while Underoath did the same with metalcore. By proving metal could express religious conviction as well as rebellion or nihilism, Christian metal challenged stereotypes of the genre as inherently anti-religious, showing its flexibility as a platform for any worldview.